Welcome to the Prospective Doctor podcast brought to you by MedSchoolCoach. Each week we cover topics related to the pre-med journey to medical school and beyond. From the MCAT to completing your application and from starting medical school to choosing a specialty, our podcast will provide essential information for anyone contemplating a career in medicine.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me. It's Dr. Marinelli here, and today I have a special guest, Dr. Taylor Lindgren. Hi, Taylor.
Hi.
Dr. Lindgren is one of the newer advisors with MedSchoolCoach, but she brings with her a lot of experience. She went to undergrad at the University of Texas at Austin and then Texas Tech University Health Science Center for medical school, and is now an anesthesiology resident at Baylor. So she has a lot of Texas experience and a lot of knowledge about the admissions experience in general and these Texas schools. So I wanted to have Dr. Lindgren on with us today to talk about some of the specifics for applying to Texas schools. As we know, they are different besides Baylor. And then we'll talk a little bit about the match process and how that works. That is coming up for a lot of people that have maybe received interviews and pre-match offers. So thought we would take some time to clarify how that works and to provide some information there. Dr. Lindgren, do you want to start by just taking us through your own process of applying to Texas schools and kind of your process of getting placed at Texas Tech?
Sure, yes. Personally, I'm from Texas. I really wanted to go to a Texas medical school to stay here, and I was interested in Texas Tech specifically because they have an MD MBA program. I really liked that. I did some business classes in undergrad and wanted to continue my business education. And so that's one of the reasons that I chose to go to Texas Tech. I also have family in Lubbock. My experience throughout the application process, I applied to all Texas medical schools. It's a flat rate. You don't have to pay extra to apply to all of them. There's really all the benefit to apply to all of them. No reason to leave any out. And that's what I did. And I actually was lucky enough to get pre-match offers from Texas Tech and TCOM during the fall of my application process. And so when I made my rank list, I took that into account as well. Mm-hmm. When I made my rank list, and this is the advice that I give everyone, is truly making your rank list based on how much you want to go to those programs. I think that sometimes there's a misconception about some strategies that you can use to match to the school that you want by changing your rank list, but I don't think that there's any strategy that you can do. I think that you should truly rank the schools in the order that you want to go to them.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Lindgren, you and I kind of touched on the fact that the TMDSAS application is different. So, backing up to some of the people that maybe haven't even started applying yet, let's just go over a few of those differences just for that information. So, one is that the TMDSAS application is completely different. So, as I said, almost every Texas school besides Baylor uses the TMDSAS application to apply to their school. And as you mentioned, there's a one flat fee of $140, which is pretty awesome. With the AMCAS application or the traditional MD application, each school costs an additional $35 or so. But with Texas, it's kind of in your benefit, as you said, just to apply to all the Texas schools. The submission date is different. It actually opens for completion, so you can start filling it out and submit it on the same day of May 15th. And then also the secondary applications for a lot of schools are attached to the TMDSAS. So students actually need to fill those out right away. So that's something to be aware of. I think that catches people off guard. Also, it's pretty clear which schools will require the CASPER exam. So you need to get that completed too before your application is going to be considered. But I think what is the most different is the match process. And we are kind of at that point in the year where a lot of people have maybe interviewed, maybe some people have had a pre-match offer, and now they're trying to figure out this process of how they go through the match process and which schools will they get considered at, et cetera. So, Dr. Lindgren, did you have pre-match offers?
Yes, I had pre-match offers from Texas Tech, where I ended up matching, and TCOM in Fort Worth.
Awesome. So for the listeners out there, again, the pre-match offers is for people that have been offered interviews after they submit their application. It's complete. They go and interview at the school. Some schools may offer you an acceptance or a pre-match offer. Those are offered between October 15th and December 31st. So it's kind of like, Dr. Lindgren, I think you would agree, it's kind of like an early acceptance in a way. It's not final. You haven't said for sure you're going to attend there, but it is like an early acceptance offer to you.
The main difference between this and an early acceptance offer would be that an early acceptance means that you can't accept offers from other schools.
Right.
But if you do get a pre-match offer, you can accept as many as you want.
And that's a great point. And so let's say like Dr. Lindgren, she got 2 pre-match offers. You can accept both of them and there's no harm, no foul. You can accept as many of them as you want to. But when that starts to boil down is when you actually enter your match preference. So the match system, you can start actually putting in your match list on August 1st, and that's through the TMDSAS application. And you have to finalize that by January 17th. So I think this is where it gets a little confusing. And, as I go through the process and every time I advise somebody, I always have to, since I didn't go through it myself, I have to refresh a little bit on some of the specifics. But one thing that's very specific is only Texas residents will go through the match. So Dr. Lindgren from Texas lives there. She went through the match. But somebody that was a non-Texas resident that applied to schools via TMDSAS do not use the match system. They can still be offered acceptances, but they do not go through that same match process, which I thought was interesting. Again, very Texas specific. Another is that you only do the match process if you have interviewed at schools. So interviewed regardless of having pre-match offers, if you have interviewed, then you have to rank all of those schools that you interviewed at. Dr. Lindgren, so you had some pre-match offers and then did you have additional interviews as well?
Yes, I did. I also had other interviews where I did not get a pre-match offer. And so I took that into account when making my own rank list as well.
Mm-hmm. So then as Dr. Lindgren said, what you're going to do is you're going to want to log in there and you're going to make a rank list based really on your interest in attending a specific school. And I think as you mentioned, Dr. Lindgren, that's so important. There's not really a strategic method here. It's really about where are you most interested in attending and then stating that interest through your rank list. Let's say you are most interested in Texas Tech, Dr. Lindgren, and we don't have to go into specifics about how you developed your rank list. But let's say you were most interested in Texas Tech and you ranked all the other schools that you interviewed below that. So you got into Texas Tech. Do you remember what happened to those other schools? Let's say the ones below Texas Tech. What happened?
If I matched to one school, then I would lose all of the other offers that I ranked below that school.
Yeah.
That way that other schools can fill the spots with other applicants, and that's how the algorithm was designed.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting. It's kind of how you're going to build your rank list is going to determine where you're going to be possibly considered at. So let's say, though, you had decided to rank a couple schools above Texas Tech, and you were given that Texas Tech match. You matched there. Do you remember what happens with those schools that you had ranked above Texas Tech?
Right. So say that I had 3 interviews at different schools and I ranked Texas Tech second. If I did match at the top school above Texas Tech, then I would have lost my Texas Tech offer. If I didn't match at that other school that I had ranked above Texas Tech, then I would match to Texas Tech and lose all of the offers below that, because I know that I already had the pre-match offer to Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, though, is that those ones that you ranked above, you would still be considered eligible for an acceptance when the schools go through their regular process of rolling admissions.
Right, exactly. And after the match day, I know that it's hard if you haven't matched. I know it can be disheartening, but it's still not too late. I would say not to give up hope. You're now likely on the wait list after match day for those other schools if you didn't match to them. And during this time, you can try to reach out to the schools that you're interested in, the ones that you interviewed at, update them on what you've been doing or what you've achieved since applying, because the application process is about a year long, so a lot can happen in that time. And then starting on May 15th, if you didn't match to any school, then offers can be extended to you from the schools that you interviewed at if you do not currently have a spot at another school. And that can be from May 15th until pretty much the time medical school starts. I know some people who got off the wait list literally the day before medical school started, and they just dropped everything and started medical school.
I think that's such a great point, is that this match process is, I think it's really designed to fill those spots early for people that have interviewed, have an acceptance, and they're pretty certain on where they're going to want to go. So it kind of helps medical students and those schools to start filling those classes with the most interested students. But then, as you were saying, the process still goes on kind of as normal after that. So there's still several months after February is when the match results actually come through, that there's a lot of movements in the seat. People that didn't have any pre-match offers are getting acceptances still. And then there's people, they'll get accepted to a higher ranked school, so they'll withdraw their other offer and go to that school. So there's a lot of movement. So I think it's such an important point. This is kind of like the first batch of people that are being set into a seat. There are still a lot of others that maybe aren't as fortunate, didn't have those pre-match offers, that are still going to get accepted.
Just because you don't have a pre-match offer doesn't mean that you're not ranked high at some medical school that you interviewed at. You still have a chance to match to that school, even if you don't have a pre-match offer.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the match process, as we were just saying, rank the schools according to your interest. If you have those pre-match offers, they're still valid as long as you don't match to a higher ranked school. So you're not going to necessarily lose what you have if you rank a school higher than that pre-match one, unless you match there. And in that case, great. You said that, let's say Texas Tech was more appealing. You didn't have a pre-match offer there. You matched there, great. Then your pre-match at another school can disappear. But let's say you don't match at Texas Tech, which you ranked higher than, let's say, the University of Texas. Then that University of Texas offer still is valid and you still get matched there. It's actually, even though I think can be difficult for applicants to understand, it actually really works in your benefit to try to use this algorithm to put you at a place where you're going to be most interested and you're going to be most happy.
From what I understand, the algorithm prioritizes applicants' preferences over schools' preferences. So, for example, if two schools both rank one applicant very high, the applicant would match to the school that the applicant ranked higher on their rank list, not whichever school ranked the applicant higher.
Yeah, and that's super awesome. I mean, it really gives the applicant that preference. And I think it's neat too, because that applicant, even though they didn't get an acceptance maybe right away from a school that they interviewed at, they still have a good chance of going to that school, which I think is really neat, which in contrast to regular admissions through AMCAS, sometimes you're placed on a wait list at different schools, but there's not really a formalized process of how people get moved off that wait list. Whereas the match kind of automatically shuffles that wait list according to the school and the applicant's preference.
And it's very similar to the residency match process as well, which I went through very recently. It seems like they use a similar algorithm, so I was pretty familiar with how that worked because I went through the TMDSAS match process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's actually was going to be my kind of closing question was like, did this help prepare you and give you some familiarity with that? Because we don't need to go into the residency match process here, but I think once when people get there, they've never gone through it before, it can be a little bit confusing too. So you probably were more familiar with it, a little bit more prepared on how to develop that rank list and how the whole overall system works. As you said, they do use similar algorithms.
Yeah, I do think that I was a little bit more prepared than somebody who hasn't gone through the match process, somebody who only applied AMCAS. I think for me personally, there is an additional layer of complexity because I did couples match through the residency match process. But I think overall, I remembered to make my rank list based on where I wanted to go. No tricks. The application match processes are not trying to trick you or rig it in any way, not trying to game the system. And I think that sometimes people overthink their rank list, trying to rank schools based on where they think they'll match as opposed to where they actually want to go. And I think that that's something very important to keep in mind.
Absolutely. For those of you that still have questions, definitely reach out to MedSchoolCoach. We can help you through this process. We didn't even talk about all the specifics about constructing your rank list, but hopefully this kind of gave an overview of the process and helped clarify some of the things that go into making that match list as you go through Texas admissions. But definitely reach out to us if you have other questions. Dr. Lindgren would love to have a conversation with you too.
Yes.
Also, the TMDSAS website has a lot of information and actually a really good little video that kind of takes you through and gives a few different scenarios to kind of help you think through how this will work specifically to your case. So, Dr. Lindgren, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, everyone.
Our mission is to inspire, encourage, and inform students as you journey through a rigorous and intricate process of achieving your dreams in medicine. Visit us at prospectivedoctor.com and medschoolcoach.com for more essential resources in your medical school journey and beyond.